What is the proper role of government?
We have a blueprint for government. I mean, it's the Constitution, and that is the blueprint for our federal government, and everything else that's not in the Constitution we've left to the states to govern. I believe the government should be limited. I think we should be focusing on certain core features of society, such as security, protection, public safety. I think that the one thing that our framers recognized is, while the Constitution is static, it's not living, it's not fluid, there is the opportunity to amend the Constitution.
Right.
And we need to be respectful of that. And so if the people get together in the proper format and procedure, modify, change, amend the Constitution, then I think that we have the power to do that, and the government's role will be whatever the amended Constitution reads as. And so with that caveat, as it stands now, I think that government is limited to what is within that Constitution.
If elected as Attorney General, what is the first thing that you would do after reading a piece of legislation and deciding how to proceed?
As Attorney General, I would hope that you're getting involved in determining constitutionality long before a bill passes. And
we can't assume that, though, anymore.
Considering that we have a narrow legislative session, I mean, it's pretty easy to ensure that, you know, somebody's reviewing these for constitutional issues before we get down that road. We recently, I was recently speaking to a reporter because they called me. I guess Gibbons and Sandoval got into a brouhaha on a comment that Sandoval made when he was running for Attorney General. And the discussion was, you know, what's your role as Attorney General? And he said to uphold the law. And a reporter saw where he was going and kind of pushed him and said, well, what if the law that was passed was saying that all Jews had to wear yellow stars? And, you know, Sandoval said he would uphold the law. And his error was that he should have said, as long as it's constitutional, he would uphold the law. And so Gibbons, of course,
went to town,
again, brought this up. I mean, this was an issue in his election, but brought it up and said he's, you know, an enabler and this and that, and a Nazi sympathizer. And I just said that has no merit in this campaign. You know, 6 years later, I think that Judge Sandoval needs to be held accountable for that comment.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's relevant to this race.
Especially since he's running for governor.
But I think it's relevant to my race in that, you know, the correct role of the Attorney General is not only to ensure that the laws are enforced, but that the laws are constitutional, and that you're not enforcing unconstitutional laws.
Jacob, what do you understand by the General Welfare Clause in the Constitution? Does it give Congress additional authority?
No, I think it was more restrictive than broadening. I think that was a term of art that was used 2-3 centuries ago, that has been interpreted improperly to just be a catch-all. And I don't think catch-alls have anywhere in government.
What do you understand the correct meaning of the necessary and proper clause, or the elastic clause, as it's sometimes called, found at the end of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution?
I think that what the framers were trying to get to was that there were certain rights and obligations of the government, military, etc. And the concern was that if you just try to put something under one of those headings, I mean, I can make an argument as an attorney that, you know, chewing bubble gum is, you know, appropriate for national defense. I think
Under the
that,
general welfare.
well, no,
clause.
just in general. And so I mean, anyone can make an argument, but by adding that qualifier, necessary and proper, what that does is it ties down your ability to make those, and it's a qualifier to those rights and obligations of the government, not, an expander.
The specific powers of state or local officials are not as clearly itemized in state constitutions or local city charters as they are in the federal constitution for federal officials. If you are elected to a state or local office, which you're running for state attorney general, what will be your guidelines in making decisions as to what you should or should not do in your office?
I think the Attorney General's office is a bit different than legislators per se. While it's a partisan process to become elected, I don't think that partisanship has a role in the office. For example, that's one of my criticisms of the incumbent, is that coincidentally, within days of when Mr. Krolicki said he wants to consider running for Mr. Reed's seat, she indicted him. And the reasons for her indictment were bogus because everything that he did was signed off by the Attorney General's office. It was pure partisanship. But yet we have examples of Mr. Lux, Mr. Miller, Ms. Marshall, who have all engaged in violations of laws related to their office, and she's gone silent about that. I think it's pure partisanship. And I think that first and foremost, the laws that exist need to be upheld and honored. We have a chapter, NRS 228, that says this is what the Attorney General does, this is the Attorney General's powers, this is the Attorney General's rights. We need to respect that, only to be surpassed by the Constitution of Nevada and the federal government. One thing that's interesting, though, is there's some major loopholes in that. For example, if the Attorney General fails to do something, who prosecutes the Attorney General? Well, it's the Attorney General. You asked about the impeachment.
Yeah.
And, the 228, I think it's 250, I may be wrong, I'm sorry, says that if the Attorney General fails to perform in her job, the Attorney General it's a misdemeanor and or subject to impeachment. But who's going to do that? First of all, Ms. Masters' refusal to sue on Obamacare, I don't think that we need to pay for a special session to impeach her. I don't think that's a prudent use of tax dollars. But that's how we would exercise the impeachment option. So then it's bringing a charge of misdemeanor. Well, that's the Attorney General's office role to do that. And so one of the things that I want to do is cure those loopholes. I want to fix those. And I'm working with some legislators to figure out how we can correct those through new legislation. So that way there is control for the controls. And I believe that, that is not the power, the privilege of the office, that's the obligation of the office to be held accountable.
What are the specific areas of responsibility of the President of the United States as listed in the Constitution?
Oh, gosh. I don't have that section memorized, I'll be honest.
Darn.
But I believe that, Commander-in-Chief, military is absolutely one. And foreign relations, is the second primary. Within that, for example, is securing our borders. I think that the failure of the government, federal government, to secure our borders, is absolutely, the buck stops at the president's office, and he is derelict in his duties and in violation of his oath of office under his roles as president to secure our borders. He should be held accountable for that.